Yo! Okay, are we live, ladies and gentlemen? Let me make sure. I'm using OBS for the first time, and so I gotta make sure everything's working right here. Okay, it says we're live on YouTube. Let me make sure the mic is getting you in both ears, because that was a problem once. Let's see. Yes. Okay. All right. We should be good to go. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? No countdown tonight because we're already kind of late. So I will just get right into the stream tonight, folks. And I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but I figured it's a good format to do, especially going forward, which is just 20 questions with thevincedao. Right? That's intuitive. And so let me just quickly explain how this is going to work. First off, on the members tab yesterday, I put out like a question thing, submit your questions. So the members will all have their questions answered. And so in the future, if you want to guarantee that your question is answered, consider becoming a member. And so I take their questions first. And then I took some questions from the community tab post, so the general public. And I think I have about, 15 or 16 questions loaded from that. And then the rest of the 20, or probably more than 20, because you know how I am. I always can never actually end the stream. After that, we'll take chat questions. If you want your chat question guaranteed answered, you can send it as a super chat. If not, I will just pick from random. So that's basically a policy here. Okay, pretty self-explanatory. We're gonna get started, but question before we actually start. Raccoon skin hat. Okay, I bought this in Fort Worth because I was such a tourist. I saw this and was like, I have to get this. Should we wear this for the stream? Should we wear this for the stream? What do you guys think? I'm not going to actually ask. I'm just going to put it on. Hold on. All right. All right. People are going to say this is cultural appropriation. Vince, you are not white. Vince, you are not Appalachian. I don't care. It's actually very cold here in Florida. What's the temperature right now? Let me see. It was like 29 degrees the other night. Unreal. It's only 60 degrees. Okay, it's actually not that cold. But all right, let's get started here, ladies and gentlemen. Raccoon skin hat Q&A. And we will start with question number 1. Let's go. So question number 1 comes from Mole Playing Rough. And he asks, what can the GOP and conservatives as a whole do to turn out their Gen Z vote in their favor without caving on the issues? Okay, so basically, what can the GOP do to win Gen Z? So I think there's two fronts here. There's the question of, like, how do you make Gen Z more conservative, which is a different process from saying, how do you get Gen Z conservatives to turn out to vote? Because I will say this, as liberal as Gen Z seems, as liberal as Gen Z is, I'm not going to downplay that whatsoever, there is a lot of turnout among our generation, I think, that Republicans have not maximized. And why did I delete all the... Did I lose all the questions? Oh, wait, no, never mind. My bad. And so I guess we'll start with the question of how do we make Gen Z more conservative? Well, I think there's two things that we can tangibly control in the somewhat immediate future. The first thing's pretty obvious. You got to take control of the education system. And people say, well, yes, we need conservatives to become teachers and professors and all that. And while that is true, and while I, would definitely encourage people to do that, if that's what they want to do, that's what they feel like their calling is, we don't really have time for that if we want to be entirely realistic. It's hard enough to march through academia as it is, as a conservative, without getting like totally destroyed by the whole system or unmasked or exposed or compromised the whole time. To become a tenured, go through all of academia, get all your PhDs, get tenured, get approved by the board when everything around you is liberal. It's not the easiest thing. I'm not saying don't do it. It's not the easiest thing. But also, how long is that going to take? Like, hypothetically, if we were to take over all of academia, how long would that take? About 20 years? 30 years at least. We don't have time for that. We cannot like lose 3 to 4 generations to the very, very, very radical left and then suddenly have the education system back. It's not going to work. And so what we need to do is start changing the education system with political power, with legislation. And this is to say all the kind of soft core, top of the iceberg bills you've seen from a lot of different Republican states. Oh, let's ban some forms of CRT. Oh, let's ban this or that in the school. You have to do that and turn it up to 10, okay? You need to have very strict guidelines on this is the curriculum that's going to be taught in our education system, and that's it, and we're going to actively write it. We're not going to just say, oh, well, you can't teach things called critical race theory, because what do? They just find a way around it. They call it diversity and inclusion instead. And then what do you do about the universities? So like I said, you have to get very aggressive with political power and fix the education system, and maybe you'll have Gen Z kids that aren't so radical. That's step one. I think step two is that you need to kind of, through years of political power more so, which you have to get that first, and that's a question for another day. You have to create a society more conducive to conservative people. And obviously that means making the school system conservative, but does it really stop there? I mean, I would argue you need to try to structure an economy where people, are getting married more, having more kids, having more families, and that's like a lot of different policies and cultural changes stacked on top of each other. But I would generally say if you push something of a more conservative society, you'll end up with more conservative people and Gen Z over time. And so that's the first part. Enclave Nationalist says, message retracted. Yeah, real. Do you guys like I haven't even been looking at chat. Do you guys like the hat? It looks like the hat is actually very popular. It is very popular. DC Perspective labels me son of the South. Okay, well, there we go. We got the approval. Okay. All right. And then the other part of the question, I guess, is how do you get Gen Z conservatives to turn out for the Republican Party? And that's where I say I genuinely do think we have a lot there that's not maximized. What do I mean by that? Well, for instance, I think the statistic, I don't know how true it was, but they said something like at ASU, Arizona State University, the campus went 96-4 for Katie Hobbs. 96-4. Okay? And don't get me wrong, the majority of kids who go to that school probably are liberal, but 96%, and I know ASU too. I know it's probably changed a little bit, but growing up still, there were a lot of just like white frat guys that went there because it was a party school from like Orange County, California, and just around Arizona and stuff. And like, I know if you put a ballot in front of them, they would vote Republican, right? There's a lot of just implicit conservatives out there. I would say like especially in fraternity culture. I don't know if you want to call them conservatives, but Republican voters at least. And same thing out here. Same thing like in the South. All like the frat guys, they all would vote Republican, right? They're all anti-Biden, anti-left. They like Trump. They like DeSantis. But how many of them show up to vote? Like virtually none. And so what I would kind of do on that front is, more outreach. But I think like what I would do if I had the power to do this, I would kind of make a thing where it's mandatory or strongly encouraged. If you want to be in a fraternity, you have to vote in an election, whatever. Make some kind of turnout initiative. I don't know. They can figure it out. Because, like I said, I think there's a lot of Republican vote hidden there that people don't really think about. And the same is true for just, like, blue-collar workers. People who went to trade school, your welders, your plumbers, especially in small-town America. Republicans always assume, our turnout is all maxed out, but that's just not true at all. There's so many people who don't like Biden, they like Trump or whatever, but they're just, they're part of like the cultural right, I guess you would say, or the cultural GOP, but they're not, there. And historically, the GOP never had to even try to get their vote because we didn't have a voting system that was so based on mass voter turnout. But now you've seen what's happened since 2020, mail-in ballots, early voting, all the stuff. We know the story there. Understand, this is what Democrats do. This is how they basically harvest votes from, black people in the inner city, college students, the liberal college students, all that stuff. And so what we need to start doing is doing the same thing. I don't know, how much the frat Gen Z guys are like really important to the electorate, but you ask the question, how do you get Gen Z to turn conservative or more conservative? But I will say the sentiment is very true. And when you apply it to the fact that there's so many just small town trade workers, especially blue collar people who maybe are disaffected with politics, maybe not entirely politically active, don't vote in every election. There's a lot of votes to be had there, and you have to start going after those votes. So there's question number 1. Thompson Spence says, VinceDao, move to my Alabama commune. I will consider it. Okay. If things break down, maybe, perhaps. Okay. But I'm trying to start my own commune here first. All right. Okay. Let's go to question number 2. Actually, I combined question 2 and 3 because they're similar questions that I kind of have the same long answer to. So we got from GB, opinion on state politics being the way forward and not federal, / from Epic Ape, are you optimistic about the future of the United States? So there's 2 parts to the question. State politics, should that more so be the focus of conservatives over federal? And then second question, am I optimistic about the future of the country as a whole? I guess I'll start with the second question and then build into the first question. I should have just said it the other way around. Genius me. But yeah. Enclave Nationalist for $2 says, what do you think of of communism and socialism? I think they are. I think they are very cringe and B-Randonized. Okay, and I don't care much for that B. Randon and his communism and socialism. So true. Okay, all right. So, am I super optimistic about federal politics? To be totally honest with you, not really. But is it a cause to be totally black-pilled? Also, no. I'll get into that. But the first thing I will say is that, for a long time, I've had this very grandiose vision in my head of a national renewal, right? Like, Trump is going to win again, and he's going to go scorched earth on the whole federal government, and that's going to, send the political establishment crashing down, and over the course of the next few decades, Republicans are going to start winning more elections, and eventually, in, 20 years, we will have our country back. And I still hope that happens. I still pray for that to happen. But I will also say, barring some type of divine miracle, I don't think that's the most realistic future for the United States. And I think, if anything, the past election kind of was an example of that, right? The last election, hypothetically, if this was kind of your view that, the dominoes are falling, it's happening, you would think the last election would have been a total sweep for Republicans, which it very much should have been. But it wasn't. Right? It wasn't. And why wasn't it? I think it meant in many ways, it was because just look at what we're actually working with as a country. It's not the country of 1980. It's not even the country of 2000. Okay? First of all, this is a very divided country. So divided that even when the president in power screws up every single thing, and people shouldn't forget that when we think about the last election. Every traditional metric that indicated Biden was going to get killed was there. Inflation was high, gas prices, jobs numbers suck, economy sucked, crime was rampant everywhere. There was prominent foreign policy disasters. Everything that's historically brought down a president was there. And yet, a couple different things. First of all, the country is so divided that, that's what happens, first of all. Second of all, the electoral system isn't exactly in our favor. Thirdly, the electorate, in many ways, is not exactly in our favor and is increasingly moving away from that. And so this is all to say, can Republicans win federal elections in the future? Yes. I think, is 2024 winnable? Yes. Can Republicans be president again? Yes. But you look at the state of Washington, D.C., it is so corrupt. It is such a deeply entrenched swamp. What you would need to truly retake federal politics is massive uses of political power on the scale of FDR. How do you do that? Well, in order to do that, you would need a super coalition in government the size of FDR. And while Republicans tangibly could win elections in the future, I'm not totally dooming on that. Will Republicans, at least in this current political system, in the republic or whatever, there's not going to go there, but there's other, but can Republicans reasonably take and wield that power? Well, for every reason I just mentioned, I don't think that's very realistic. And so it's the question of, can we truly ever take back the federal system? I'm not super optimistic about it. Okay. But there's a flip side to that, which is that I think, sure, over the next few decades, every indication seems to be the federal government is not really going to be in our favor. The cards are going to be pretty stacked against us there. But I would also say that the divided nature of our country is, for the first time in a century, going to decrease the power of the federal government, in the sense that, first of all, we're probably going to have a divided government for the next few decades going forward. You're going to exist in a perpetual state like you do right now, where Democrats hold 60% of the power, but Republicans hold the other 40, enough to where it's really hard for the federal government to get a lot of sweeping change through. But then on top of that, this is where the kind of the second part of the question comes in. Look at the states, right? Already you are starting to see the signs of the federal system that we've had since FDR slowly starting to crumble, because what's happening? States are beginning to stand up to the federal government. This happened under Trump, right? What happened? Sanctuary states, stuff like that. States just outright said, we're not enforcing federal law. And what's kind of happening under Biden? Sorta. I mean, Republicans need to do more, but what is DeSantis and the governor of Montana kind of saying, oh, we're going to push back a little bit. Apparently there's something going on in Missouri where the attorney general's office there is basically nullifying federal policy and investigating the FBI. And so this is to say that I think the realistic future for creating, at least parts of this country that are worth living in and that are controlled by real conservatives, is we have to take power in all the deep red state governments. And I don't mean, the current class of Republican leadership in most red states. I mean seriously strong America First people who are going to say, just straight up, we're nullifying federal policy, right? The federal government's not going to tell us what to do. And creating these kind of strong arm conservative states. Think about Florida, but way beyond that, right? What you see in Florida right now, in Missouri and Montana, those are the first steps. We're going to, I think, hopefully build a block to where even if the federal system is kind of stacked against us, we have very powerful states who are willing to say, who cares about the federal system? Washington, D.C. is not going to tell Alabama or Florida or Texas or Montana or whatever what they're going to do, right? And so is this an ideal solution? No, the ideal solution is take back DC and run the country. Take back America, not take back the South or take back rural America or the Reds. Yeah, you want to ideally wield power over all of America. I'm just giving you the realistic answer here. I think that's the best realistic case scenario going forward as conservatives. And who knows, maybe through several decades of strong states kind of setting the trend instead of the federal government, maybe then that has spillover effects into federal politics. I don't know. And none of this is to say, by the way, let me be clear, none of this is me saying give up on federal politics, don't vote, don't be involved, because federal politics obviously still matters. It's important. There are a lot of policies that only the federal government can impact, at least on paper. At least on paper. And it's important, right? But the question isn't should we be involved in federal politics and do our best. Of course we should. The question is, are we ever going to truly take back federal politics? Again, at least under the current state of things. And I think the more realistic situation, I would say, is do what we can at the federal level, try to hold as much power as we can, kind of hold the line, as cringe as that sounds, hold the line, try to do some decent things, and then our own states is where we're really going to get stuff done and kind of build our future. And again, that is not ideal. No one said it's ideal. Because what do you do about the conservatives stuck in blue states? I don't know. But that's the nature of a divided country, and a country that in many ways is just divided against us. So that's what I would say. Christopher Lowry, who I've not seen in chat in a couple days, but thank you very much for the $10, says, honestly, I think further division in this country will lead to the decentralization of sorry, I can't talk today. Decentralization of America, similar to empires in the past like Macedon and Rome. People are inherently tribal. Yeah, well, that's exactly what I'm saying, right? Because keep in mind, too, how is the federal government... I mean, look at the state of the federal government, because you could say, oh, the feds will never leave us alone. And to an extent, that's true. To an extent, yeah. But also, how competent are the feds going to be in the long run at enforcing their will? First of all, look at the federal bureaucracy. It's already kind of incompetent. But... you look at stuff like all the affirmative action, all the diversity hiring that these agencies are doing now. What do you think the long-term effect of that is in 10 to 20 to 30 years? The long-term effect is going to be completely incompetent, corrupt, do-nothing federal bureaucracies. In many ways, all of this nonsense is going to cause the deep state to sort of implode on itself to a state where it can't really do what it wants to do because they've hired so many stupid, incompetent people, right? And then, where's the federal government going to get money from? It's obviously going very broke. There are a lot of factors, plus the political division of America, stacked against the kind of existence of strong federal power that we've had since FDR, right? And the country's so divided now, the super coalitions of the FDR Democrats or the Reagan Republicans or the Nixon Republicans or the LBJ Democrats, the state of the country now, that's just not realistic anymore. The country's too divided. And if the country is too divided, it's going to be hard for us at the federal level to do what we really need to do, right? Because if we really want to say we're going to take back the federal system, that doesn't just mean elect Republicans for a few cycles. That means super coalition, tear down the entire federal bureaucracy, tear down the entire deep state, upend the whole system. And again, in order to do that, you need a coalition the size of past coalitions that, again, no longer really possible. So, I'm not black-pilled, right? I'm not, doom and gloom about the whole situation. I think we just need a refocus of not even what our mission is, just what our expectations are, right? Yeah, federal politics sucks. It's going to piss you off a lot of the time, but focus on what you can control, right? You can tangibly improve the community around you. You can even tangibly improve like your state, right? And so, I think that's really where the focus of conservatives should be going forward. Again, don't give up on federal politics. I'm just saying this is where we really are going to get stuff done, at least for the time being. Federal politics, kind of just hope that clown show stays in gridlock, at least until we figure something out, like seriously on that front. Okay. House of Osborne says, based hat, thank you very much. What do you think of the current infiltration of Islam? Also, I want to encourage others and myself to use our talents for God's purposes. That second part is so true, because I think there's a lot of things in our circle that are just like missing, right? Art, I guess that's one example. Art. We do have a lot of content creators, if I'm gonna be honest, but we're missing like types of that. You know what I'm saying, though. Different types of professionals, et cetera, et cetera. And so I absolutely agree, right? There's definitely a need out there for Christians to fill a lot of different spheres and a lot of different parts of society. So absolutely. But thank you for the $5. What do you think of the current infiltration of Islam? If you mean, do you mean like in America, or like I don't know exactly what you mean by that. I will say in America, it's not really quite as bad or as massive as Europe. Not saying it won't get there, but I think there's a lot of things like seeping into society from other places that, are a lot more noticeable, at least at the current moment, than Islam. But I don't know exactly what you mean by that question. But thank you very much for the 5. Thank you for all the support we have gotten tonight. Okay, next up to question number 4. That was 3 and... No. Yeah, that was 2 and 3. So next up to question number 4. Lionoz Romans 5:8 says, what are your thoughts on optics and their importance? Optics are everything. The idea of optics, for those, I think everyone's familiar at this point, but to those not super familiar, is like presentation, right? And so it's not just about what you say, although it is, but it's like how you say things, how you present yourself, how you look. And it's very funny that you're getting lectured on optics by a guy wearing a raccoon skin hat. But, many would say this is good optics. I don't know, whatever. But, it's just simple social science. You can have the best ideas in the world. No one's going to listen to them if you don't have good optics, If, you show up on a stage and you look like a slob, if you say things that may be true, but you say them in a very stupid way that are not convincing or not moving to people, then they're not going to believe them, right? And so optics are very important. I would say the optics of how you present your ideas, no matter what the ideas are literally on the same level of importance as the ideas themselves. Because the ideas themselves won't go anywhere if they don't have optics. And, that's part of why I just as one example of why I spent so much money on the setup we have right now. These lights and all that stuff. Do you think I wanted to do that? No, I would have been much more, my bank account would be much better off if we just kept like the $30 ring light and the $30 little stage lights. But there is something to be said, just as one example of optics, there's a lot of different ways that optics matter, but it's like people don't really want to watch stuff where the lighting is bad or the audio is bad, on top of things like how you present yourself, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, optics are everything. And that's not just a rule for politics, that's a rule for life. You can walk into a job interview being the most qualified guy for the job, but if you come off wrong, if you don't look professional, whatever it is, you're not going to get the job, right? Because human beings are very visual, auditory creatures. We judge people within minutes, I shouldn't say minutes, seconds of seeing them, whether we wanted to admit it or not. And so I think people need to understand that and kind of use that human psychology to their utility. So, yeah. Enclave Nationalist. I will add that to the backlog, actually. For $5, thank you very much, though. He says, would you support free trade if our economy wasn't so weak? I will add that, actually, to the log of our actual questions here. Okay. I'll answer your question toward the end of the stream, Enclave. Thank you very much for the 5. Okay. Next up to question number... What are we on now? 5? Okay, question number 5. Here we go. From RD2124 says, from a paleoconservative point of view, was engaging in the Cold War worth it? Fun fact, RD, I have a members-only video discussing this specifically as it pertains to the Vietnam War. Haha, you talk about the Vietnam War because you're Vietnamese. Okay, get your jokes in, But, and that's what people are going to say, right? When they hear my take, they're going to be like, sorry, still have a cold here. People are going to be like, oh, that's just dual loyalty because you're Vietnamese. No, shut up. Listen, okay, I didn't have this view all my life growing up. It's something I've kind of developed for reasons totally independent of that, but people will say what they want to say. My answer would be yes. Okay, my answer would be yes. And you might say, well, as a paleoconservative, as a America first or whatever, how can you reconcile that with saying, oh, America shouldn't have been involved in Iraq, or America shouldn't be involved in Ukraine? There's a very simple answer there, and it's the question of what are we fighting for, right? What we are fighting for today is imperialism in the name of democracy and liberalism and whatever else, okay? That's not what the Cold War was about. Which is why when you look at the history of the Vietnam War protests, who was protesting against the Vietnam War? And this is something I had like this cognitive dissonance for many years because I used to be anti-war, all American intervention, basically, like 90% of it I used to be against. I was like, Korea War, that wasn't provoked. Vietnam War, that wasn't provoked. It was like, okay, maybe that's what you say, but I had to ask myself this. Why is it that all the people who protested against the Vietnam War were leftists? Why were they all communists? Right? Because Jane Fonda didn't say, America first, bring the boys home. It's not in our interest. I'm a nationalist. No, she said, I'm going to go live with the North Vietnamese for 10 years. Not 10 years, 1 year, and talk about how great they are. Right? And that gets down to the core of it, which is that the anti-Vietnam protests, really the anti-Cold Warrior stance in general, never was about America first. You didn't have America first like Christian conservatives protesting against the Vietnam War. All of those protests were led by the left. Why? Because what was the Cold War about? It wasn't about spreading liberal imperialism. It was about not even spreading anything. It was about stopping the spread of communism around the world, right? And we can look at that in a modern context and say, okay, but still America first, who cares? It's like, I guess, but look at it from the perspective of people who were around back then, Which, by the way, Pat Buchanan, godfather of the modern paleoconservatism, was a Cold Warrior himself, right? A lot of Cold Warriors, a lot of paleoconservatives, I should say, were kind of on board with the Reagan Revolution and splintered afterward when George H.W. Bush said, New World Order, let's go spread imperialism for democracy, right? But again, you can say that, but realistically, should the United States have just said, we're going to allow communism, this satanic evil ideology that goes against everything that, our country and goodness and righteousness stands for, just let it spread all around the world, all the way up to our own borders? Because domino theory was 100% valid. Domino theory, I would argue in many ways, the idea that if we let one country fall to communism, they're all going to fall to communism around them. How is that any different from us saying the slippery slope of cultural Marxism means if you allow X event to happen, then it's going to tumble into Y event and Z event and so on and so on. Same exact thing. And so I ask you from a realistic perspective, should the United States have just sat there and allowed Marxism to spread around the world? To literally every single country, right? And nowadays I say no. And this is not to say necessarily should the U.S. have been involved in every single conflict ever. No, I mean, you got to be a realist about it. You got to be practical about what's a realistic use of your resources. But like the fundamental idea that America should have just basically sat back from like 1950 to 1991, sat on its hands, been involved in nothing. I just don't think that's accurate or right. And I would say there's a strong distinction between that and like neoconservatism, because it's all about what are we fighting, right? Neoconservatism says mainly, actually, let's topple all these like random Islamic theocracies that aren't even doing anything to us. Let's go and topple them all and force this vision of liberal democracy on everyone else, on those countries. That's not what we did during the Cold War. The Cold War really was like, we don't care how you run your country. In fact, many times they propped up very authoritarian governments that were right-wing and anti-communist, but we're not going to let you fall to communism. And it's not even about conquering Russia or conquering North Vietnam. It's all about just stopping the spread, right? Holding the line. Again, I think those things are very different. And so I would say, as a paleoconservative, I 100% would say, I'm nowadays, not always, but at this point in my life, I look back on the Cold War and say a lot of those things were justified. And I further say in many ways that America is still fighting the Cold War in our own culture, right? I kind of view the two as comparable. The culture war against the cultural Marxists, the global war against the, governmental Marxists of different nations. Same battle, same spiritual warfare in many ways going on. And so that's kind of the way I see it. But to answer your question, I would honestly say yes. Zachary for $2 says, not really true though. Robert Taft didn't support it. Are we talking about something else? Because I didn't really mention Robert Taft. I don't know. Robert Taft, the architect of domino theory in the bathtub. Once you fall in one bathtub, then you're gonna fall in all the bathtubs around it. Very real. But yeah. Okay. Brian says, is your family from North or South Vietnam? I learned something new. They're actually from the North. Yeah. No, yeah. So I always grew up thinking we were from the South, but I guess they were actually in the North, and they were very wealthy. They were like aristocrats in the North, and that's why they ended up migrating south, way before the 70s for obvious reasons. So I think like genealogically we're actually from the North, but obviously like we identify with the South for obvious reasons. And I guess that's where the name Dao probably comes from, right? Because like Dao has Chinese origins. And so I don't know, it's probably crossover. I don't know. I wish I could say I knew my family history that well, but we don't really know. Okay. And like, I'm jealous of like a lot of my white friends whose families have been here since the revolution, because they know their whole lineage. Because, Americans actually have documented that stuff, right? So, I was related to so-and-so, or I'm like the 5,000th cousin of Washington or something. I don't know anything about my family, like pre-immigration, really. I know like vague stories, that's it. Now, post that, like, I know everything, and I can tell you this and that, so-and-so, but I don't know. Maybe I should take an ancestry test, although people were schizo and told me not to take it because then you're giving your DNA to the regime, and I was like, okay, so I won't. So I don't know. I don't know my family history that well. But I recently learned that like Christmas, we actually came from the north, and that was a recent discovery of mine. I never really knew that. Okay. All right. Next up, question number 6 comes from Gray the Gamer, and he says, "What do you like most, pirates, knights, or ninjas?" Well, people are gonna accuse me of. No, it's true. I got to side with the tribe on this one, because growing up I was into ninjas. Okay, I don't have anything against. Actually, I did have a pirate phase too, but I never really had a knight phase, because when it came to knights and samurai and all that stuff, I was like, they wear too much armor. I want to be stealthy. I want to be agile, and so I was really into ninjas growing up. You know, I had a katana, a toy one, but it was actually pretty sharp. We got it from like Chinatown in San Francisco. And so it was supposed to be a toy, but it was made out of wood, and it was actually pretty sharp. But I had a toy katana, and I had the ninja stars, and I used to sneak around the house and all that. And so I got to give the answer ninjas. Okay, people might say that's cringe, but that's what I grew up on. Okay, so it's ninjas all the way for me. So, okay, question number 7. Enclave Nationalist says, "What are your thoughts on WWE potentially being sold to Saudi Arabia?" See, Enclave Nationalist always asks very interesting questions, okay? Interesting questions. And so I have to assume there's something here that has to do with something or not. But I'm just going to take it totally at face value. I haven't really heard anything about this, but I know WWE started doing shows in Saudi Arabia, which really actually fascinates me, because I didn't watch them. I haven't watched like wrestling since 8th grade or whatever. But do they still do the women's matches when they're in Saudi Arabia? Do they still have the divas? Or I guess they don't call them divas anymore. They're women's champions. Okay, do they have the women's champions do those stuff or any of that? I'd have to imagine no. I don't know. But what are my thoughts on WWE being sold to Saudi Arabia? Honestly, it's like, would you rather let the Saudis control, that aspect of entertainment? Would you rather let the Saudis like run WWE? Or would you rather let wokeism and Hollywood and all that stuff? I don't know. I think I'd rather the Saudis be in charge. Okay? Like, they actually might write some funny stories. They'll be so ridiculously over the top and cliche or whatever, that and just like anti-PC, that I kind of hope it happens. Okay? I kind of hope it happens, because maybe you'll see like just fun storylines again, and you'll see the political incorrectness that wrestling is supposed to be about, and just kind of the over-the-top ridiculousness that probably doesn't exist anymore. So I don't really know, but I will say, for the purposes of entertainment, I honestly support it being sold to Saudi Arabia. I think that'd be kind of funny. I think that'd be pretty fun, honestly. So, all right. WWE is an American tradition. Well, I absolutely agree. Don't get me wrong. Okay, don't get me wrong, Uric. I know. And I'm not anti. People always like, don't you know it's fake? It's like, okay, first of all, it's not fake, quote unquote. It's scripted. There's a difference. Okay, as someone who I actually used to do like amateur pro wrestling or whatever in 8th grade or whatever. Actually, fun fact, I have a friend who I'm not going to name because he probably doesn't want me to, and I'd probably get him in trouble. I have a friend right now who is a pro wrestler, and his origins, he's in like the indie scene, and the origins of that were like in 8th grade, he had a trampoline with ring ropes around it, and we used to have a YouTube channel, which you can try looking for it. It's not public anymore. Sadly, I kind of wish it was. Then again, he'd probably have his career ruined if, some of the jokes made and that stuff would be public. I would be fine. Because I could say, I was in 8th grade, calm down, politically correct libtard or whatever. Like, I could reasonably write off some of the stuff we did in our 8th grade pro wrestling YouTube channel. Him, I don't know. So, privacy, not gonna tell you who this kid is. But we used to do that like on trampoline, so it wasn't as real. But I did learn how to do some of the spots and whatnot. And he was training at an actual wrestling school when we were doing it. And I will say, yeah, you can call it fake or whatever. Like, it is fake, quote unquote. It's scripted. But that stuff is not easy, okay? It requires extreme athleticism. It hurts, okay? It really hurts, That's not fake CGI blood when it comes out, okay? That's real, it's intense stuff. And it is an American tradition, I agree. But my point is, considering the state of how bad WWE has become and entertainment in general, it would be kind of based if the Saudis took it over. Like, they'd probably do a much better job, right? And I'm sure the Great Khali is gonna win like every single match. And like, what's that other guy? Jinder Mahal? But I'll take that if it's actually like funny and fun again, which it has not been. So, what's the difference between scripted and fake? Well, it's fake would be like it's a CGI, you know what I mean? Or like people, I don't know. You know what I mean? Fake is like, oh, they film it on a set. You kind of just do like what they do in movies where you just punch in front of the air and then they kind of edit it to make it look like that's not what they do in WWE. Like, that stuff really does hurt. It's all live. It's stunts, yeah, but it's not, it's not all controlled, quote unquote. That's what it means. It's still a talent and not a very easy thing to do. And you don't believe me, try it yourself. Okay, so if WWE is so easy, just film me, get a friend, say we're gonna do like fake WWE stuff, and just like do it and do what you think they're doing, film it on camera and see if it looks anything like WWE. Try it yourself, and then you realize it's actually kind of hard. It's not. And I'm saying, as someone who like did it mildly, like not even in the real form, but did it like somewhat in middle school, for a stupid YouTube channel with like 40 subscribers, I will tell you, it's you have to learn it. It does take a degree of athleticism. It's not the easiest thing, and sometimes it really does get you hurt. That's all real, So you can just look how an indie wrestler is versus professional to see how their fancy moves are not easy and how good they are at pretending. Yeah, real. Did you know Hulk Hogan was going to be Trump's VP? Who said that? I don't know who said that, but I support that. Okay, can you imagine that? Trumpomania is going to run wild. So true. Real. Okay. All right, let's see what we got next here. We will go on to question number 8. All right, give me a second here. Question number 8. Oops. I opened maps on accident. My bad. Okay, question number 8 comes from Victor Guzman. And he says, what would you recommend to a person running for mayor in a Democrat city due to win? You can't be partisan about it. I mean, that's just the truth. What do you want to do to win? I think people understand this intuitively. Don't campaign on saying you're a conservative. As tempting as it is, don't get involved in the national culture war or any of that stuff. Don't really be partisan. Don't really show any hands in terms of what party you are or anything. Try to run unaffiliated or whatever if you can. But center your campaign around the kitchen table issues that really affect the city. Now, you say it's a Democrat city. I don't know where you live, but I'd assume an issue that most people in most cities across America are very worried about and pressed with are the issues of crime and homelessness, right? Those are arguably, I would say, in politics in general, the two most powerful issues. You know what I mean? You just go out there and say that. It's very popular among people. It doesn't always necessarily have to come off as partisan. And so I would say focus your campaign heavily on tough on crime, law and order, and we're going to clean up the streets. Okay? And of course, do the other stuff like education. We're going to make better schools, all that other nonsense, fix the roads, whatever. Do all that stuff. Put that in your platform. But I'm telling you, the two issues you really want to focus on and drive home if you want to have a chance in a Democrat city: crime, homelessness, right? Rick Caruso, who I was kind of disappointed didn't win, but he came very close in Los Angeles. He's a Republican, you know? I mean, he's probably not a very hardcore one, not a very conservative one, but he was a Republican. Actually ran as a Democrat for the purposes of optics or whatever, but he came very close, having a very kitchen table, straight to the point campaign, not on the national culture war, but on stop the crime, law and order, clean up the homeless problem. I think you focus on that, you don't really let other stuff distract you, then you could get a, Rudy Giuliani type of miracle happen in your Democrat city. So don't show your hand, be careful, be smart. And like I said, crime and homelessness. Republicans should take note of that too. 2024. I don't think they focused on it enough in 2022, to be honest. I mean, I know they talked about it. Don't get me wrong. But we need like a very all-out blitz approach. And I thought they dropped the ball in 2020 as well doing this. We need to basically be like a single issue party, almost, not entirely, but run almost as a single issue party in terms of what we focus on. Just crime, 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 tough on crime, law and order, etc., etc. I'm telling you, that resonates with way more people than you think, and it's a way more powerful issue than economics or education or any of this other stuff. Crime, homelessness. It's like the two things that everyone outside of a very lunatic 10% of, college professors or whatever, 90% of America hates those things. And if you go straight to them with it, I'm telling you, you'd be surprised what you could do. But there is question number 8. All right, next up, question number 9 comes from Proud Rickomaniac. Final question should be, why is VinceDao so based? So true. Okay, Proud Rickomaniac with question number 9 says, opinion on Orthodox Christianity. So I will be honest, Orthodoxy is the mainline denomination that I know the least about. And so I will say I don't really have necessarily the super strongest opinion because I don't really know that much about it. I know they're more kind of mystic than a lot of the other Christian denominations. I know they claim apostolic succession. Other than that, I don't really know a lot about Orthodoxy. One thing I will say that I find cool about Orthodoxy is the way in which their teaching and presentation is very centered around like spiritual warfare, right? Like they celebrate Easter mainly as a victory day, right? Like Christ's victory over death, like that's kind of their focus, whereas Easter in Catholicism and Protestantism is more of like a somber day. They're all about like victory over death. And, as a Protestant, the idea of drawing Jesus specifically, I don't think it's like heresy or whatever, but I will say some of the Orthodox art I've seen is very cool, right? It's Michael the Archangel with a sword, Christ with a sword, because they understand we exist in a state of spiritual warfare. And I'll give them credit there because I think there's a lot of Western Christianity that doesn't really frame the battles we face in life and in this world as what it is, which is spiritual warfare. And that's probably why a lot of Orthodox have like an understanding of that, right? Because that's kind of how they frame a lot of their, like I said, teaching and presentation. So I will say that is one aspect of orthodoxy that I like. But like I said, I don't know a lot about it theologically, if I were to be honest. So there you go. Christopher for $5, thank you very much, says, hey Vince, on the issue of crime, just curious, what is your opinion on the death penalty? I think it depends on the crime itself. I will add that to the list, actually, of chat-based questions. Okay, question 18 is going to be death penalty. All right. Thank you very much for the 5, Christopher. Appreciate it. I've added that to the log. We will answer it more towards the end of the stream. Okay. Question number 10. Let me fix the graphic. Okay. Question number 10. Oh, this is a spicy one. It's where did the beef with AF people come from? So I think it's important to understand that there's always been a very uneasy friction. That goes back to 2021. Before I even really said anything about them, they attacked us, attacked APU, whatever. It was mild, and then things died down or whatever. Starting, I guess, around the Joe Kent stuff, I started to think to myself, say what you will about these people. How does their political strategy make any sense? So Joe Kent disavows them. It's whatever. But here they are basically devoting their entire 2022 primary energy stuff, not into getting anyone elected, not into pushing so-and-so candidate, but instead not just campaigning against the Republican, which is oftentimes acceptable, campaigning against one of the furthest right Republican politicians in the cycle. I understand he's not perfect. I understand there's issues. But I was what is this movement really politically doing? And a lot of them attacked me because I wouldn't go out there and say not to vote for Joe Kent. I would say, I disavow Joe Kent. I wasn't going to do that because, say what you will about this comment or that comment, but it's this is a guy running for office. He's one of the most right-wing candidates in the country. You know what I mean? How is it strategically smart to say this guy who, like it or not, admit it or not, in Congress would have helped push the Republican caucus to the right, by the way, was anti-Kevin McCarthy. He would have been one of the anti-McCarthy rebels there. How is making your entire 2022 midterm effort about primarying against, not Nancy Mace, not any of but Joe Kent? How is that really smart? How does this political strategy make a whole lot of sense? It kind of raised eyebrows for me. But I would say really where I guess the beef, quote unquote, really started. I don't really consider it beef because they're not really all that relevant to me or anything like that. But, sometime in May, I saw that Jaden McNeil, Simon, his former, was a producer or whatever, they basically came out and exposed a lot that was wrong with Nick Fuentes and his movement, right? Talked about how, it was basically this psychotic cult of blackmail, about how he was going around, blackmailing all of his ex-associates, threatening to go to the FBI on all these different people. Baked Alaska, probably an FBI informant. He was surrounding himself with Milo Yiannopoulos, a confirmed FBI informant. We've shown those receipts actually on stream before. A confirmed FBI informant, I should say. And you look at that and you look at the fact that all of his serious former associates were saying the same exact thing about him. Psychotic blackmail, death cult, burns every bridge he has, terrible person. And then, I out of curiosity, people saying that, I then kind of saw some of the stuff that he had been saying, And it's just totally deranged. Like, it's just totally ridiculous, you know, like having sex with a woman is gay, dating women is gay, attacking people for having families, all this stuff is out there, by the way. I don't know, maybe we can pull it up sometime. I don't have the screen sharing thing on right now, but going out here saying this, all this absolutely unhinged stuff, you know, attacking rural America, attacking the South, attacking like white Americans, ironically, of all people, you know, the guy who's so based and pro-white and all that stuff. And so, and keep in mind, by the way, by that point, by the stream, I don't know, I know like Dalton Clodfelter and these people had done like 6-hour streams attacking me and some of my friends. I hadn't said anything. So all I said upon like learning all this crazy psychotic behavior was say a prayer for everyone who is stuck in cults. That's all I said. I didn't name drop Nick, America First, Groypers, whatever. I just said, say a prayer for people who are trapped in cults. And they took that as a slight against them, which is ironic because I didn't say anything about that. But, you know, point proven. And then, you know, they went psycho about that, blah, blah, blah. And I guess that's where the beef started. I mean, I don't know. I don't consider it beef. If it were beef, I'd spend a lot of time like making all this content about them, but I don't, you know. I just largely view them as totally unserious political actors and, you know, kind of like this psychotic death cult. But to the extent that I wish I do call them out or criticize them, it's because I think they're also something that is in many ways counterproductive to the American right. Because in many ways, I mean, first of all, they're just destroying a lot of young men's lives, which, you know, it's like being a groyper. If you don't do that yourself, you can guarantee if you ever try to leave or get out, it's going to be done for you because it's a psychotic cult of blackmail, and they've tried to blackmail like everyone who tries to leave. They try to dox them, ruin their employer, dox people. Oh, that's another thing I should talk about, the mass reporting, right? Nick Fuentes admitted on stream to like mass reporting other right-wingers he doesn't like and trying to get them flagged and trying to take them down from the internet. And that's like party foul number one of like being in this sphere. It's like, even if you don't like each other, even if you have beef with each other, we don't play into the hands of like obviously blackmailing people with the feds, which he does, but then also reporting people to big tech, trying to get their content flagged and taken down. Like, you know, that's just like, they're very basic rules of engagement there that are like being broken. And anyone who goes out there and does that, especially does that to other right-wingers, yeah, that's gonna like piss me off. Like that's, you're never gonna be friends with me, you know, doing that. Or allies or whatever. So that was another thing I forgot to mention. But yeah, I mean, I guess all that stuff compounds. But like, getting back to what I was saying, you know, it is something in many ways that's counterproductive to the American right, because not only is it destroying a lot of young men's lives and like standing for nothing serious at this point. Like what do they stand for? What do they stand for? Like supporting Malcolm X and MLK, you know. That's what Students for Kanye posted the other day on MLK Day, whatever. But then on top of that, it's taking a lot of young men who otherwise could do something serious, you know, who otherwise could say, you know, I'm going to do this political thing or that thing or have this job, you know, whatever it is. I'm not saying it has to be watch my content or be involved in anything. I'm not even saying, just who otherwise could do something. Instead, you know, naively are getting roped into the psychotic death cult, and now they're stuck there. They can't leave because, you know, those receipts are going to follow them forever. But then on top of that, they're going to make sure those receipts follow them forever because they're going to psychotically blackmail every single one of their former associates. It's just a mess. It's a honeypot. It's just not something that, you know, I think people should be a part of. You know, it's pretty simple. So there you go. There's a short-handed explanation of the America First beef. Okay, I don't consider it beef, because, you know, a beef would be something that like goes back ways you're debating. It's not like that. I just think they're idiots. They think I'm an idiot. Whatever, it is what it is, right? So okay, praying for their maturity. So true. Yeah, exactly. They called Alex Jones like controlled opposition. Like when you claim to purport to be a conservative movement that's trying to exist in the semi-mainstream zeitgeist, I know like they're dissonant or whatever, but they also say, "Oh, we're not like we're not like Richard Spencer, we're not like the white nationalists." When you're like calling that to Alex Jones, you've kind of lost the plot. But then at this point, also like what differentiates them from Richard Spencer and the the white nationalists, the Wignatzers as they call it, right? The people years ago, Nick Fuentes got his start in saying these people are horrible optics, they're not getting anything done. Why? Because they're saying they love Hitler. That's what he said in 2018, 2019. Now they're saying they love Hitler, right? AF and Groypers are saying openly, we love Hitler. All the like crazy, ridiculous, unoptical nonsense that Nick used to claim, oh, I'm against. They're doing all of that. Like what does it even stand for at this point? What is it? I think a federal honeypot, if you want the honest truth. And there's many reasons I think that, okay? Between Baked, Alaska, and formerly Milo Yiannopoulos, and Ollie Alexander, and Nick Fuentes himself was a very interesting tape on January 6th that oddly he never got in. Not saying he should have gotten in trouble, but oddly he never got in trouble for when much more mainstream people like Brandon Straka got in trouble for saying the same thing outside the Capitol, and what a lot of conservatives say Ray Epps is a Fed because he did. Again, Nick is on camera doing that. Never faced prosecution from the government. No fly list was never even about January 6th. It was because he threatened to kill a flight attendant on stream. Court documents prove that. And even like having his money seized, that was because he got a bunch of Bitcoin from some shady European source and they give him back the money in 2 months. So neither of those, the persecution of Nick Fuentes, that's not even real. But then like saying, but then like why did he never face persecution from the government in terms of charges when other people got charges for saying the same exact thing outside the Capitol, and the people that didn't get charges, conservatives, regularly say Ray Epps, FBI informant, obviously. Well, what does that say about Nick Fuentes? Okay. So there's basically your answer. Okay. Federal honeypot, like I said. All right. Question number 11. Here we go. From Raymond Noodles. Hold on, let me change the screen here. Question number 11 from Raymond Noodles says, what is your opinion? Oh, wait, no, wrong one. What are your thoughts on the invasion of Ukraine being compared to 9/11? I've been seeing a lot of posts about that. It's partially true in the sense that I guess it is a catalyst for a change in American foreign policy, sort of, right? Like, I could see that comparison, but actually that's not even really true because 9/11 is not what started intervention in the Middle East. It only ramped it up. 9/11 actually happened as a unfortunate byproduct of American intervention in the Middle East. But I guess you could say the same thing about Ukraine. So I guess that actually is true. But I guess it is kind of a 9/11 style incident in the sense that it's changing the entire course of American foreign policy, right? Last 20 years, we've been focused on the Middle East, all these proxy wars. And now a lot of the focus of American foreign policy is, stopping Russia, stopping China to an extent. So I guess if that's what you're saying, I mean, I could see that comparison. I don't know. I'm not necessarily saying I support those foreign policy changes or whatever. I'm just saying if you can make that comparison, I could see that. But beyond that, I mean, I don't know. All right. Question number 12 comes from Liesel Igfried. Let me switch to question number 12 here. All right, I now lost it. Liesel Igfried says, what is your opinion on the supposedly right-wingers of the social Darwinist / classical liberal camp? So those are like two different things. I guess we'll start with the classical liberal one because it gets kind of more fun to talk about. This is what a lot of people get wrong about conservatism, is the idea that conservatism is about classical liberalism, right? Conservatism is about individualism, right? And hyper-individualism as that. It's not. Like, that's not what conservatism is. Now, conservatism also, I will be clear, is not collective. It's not blanket collectivism either, right? What conservatism is about is really the preservation of like a traditional moral and social order, right? And so I would say if classical liberalism is surrounded, hyper-focused on the individual, and like communism, socialism, hyper-focused on the collective, conservatism is focused mainly around these sort of like traditional institutions such as the family, the community, the church, right? The locality or whatever, right? And so I think a conservative is individualistic enough to respect things like human dignity and kind of like individuality, not to the extent to which, oh, go do like literally whatever the heck you want with your life, but to the extent to which, you know, you're kind of granted the liberty and the freedom to enjoy the things that are nice about life, like having children, having a family, you know, owning property, things like that. But we are also, you know, not so individualistic that we disregard any natural duties of human beings, right? So the conservative says, we're not collectivist because, you know, we don't believe in this, like, making everyone a total slave to the state or to the ideology or whatever. But we're also not so individualistic that, like, literally everyone go run around naked and do whatever you want and have no responsibility. We're of, like, the traditional state of human existence, or what has traditionally been seen as good, which is you ought to start a family, you ought to own property, you ought to raise that family and be a functioning, good standing member of your community. And we'll give you the freedom to do that to an extent, right? The individualism to do that, because, you know, if you're off, if the government or the ideology, the revolution is consuming everything, then you don't have the power to really do that. But also that liberty is going to be an ordered liberty, right? It's going to come with the responsibilities of saying, well, naturally you do ought to have a responsibility to your family, your community, you know? So that's kind of, I would say that's kind of like I know it's kind of like, I don't know if I articulated that the best, but that's kind of what distinguishes what I would define to be conservatism from classical liberalism. And on the other hand, from things like, you know, communism, collectivism, whatever, right? Okay, on the second topic of social Darwinist, I guess, I mean, what is, I've heard like many definitions of social Darwinism, so it's like, I don't know. I guess it depends what you mean by that. But, you know, the thing I will say is that structuring your ideology off of Darwinism, you know, structuring your worldview off of, like, you know, scientific, materialist, atheistic theories and things and beliefs, I just don't think is very conservative, and I think is kind of cringe. Now, there is, again, I don't know what, like, you mean by social Darwinism. Like, it's a broad, I've heard the term used in many different contexts, but, you know, there is truth to the idea that, and as a Christian, I believe this too, that, like, you know, human beings are hierarchical, you know, they are not, but the where I differ is I think everyone is of worth, right, as a Christian. But I definitely do think, like, yeah, God makes human beings different, and so you're going to see disparities, you're going to see differences between people. I guess where we differ is that as a Christian, I believe that all human beings have worth and have value, and, you know, and have meaning, and were created by God for a purpose. Whereas I guess the social Darwinists would say, you know, you have no utility except what you can produce and provide. It's very kind of like nihilistic when you think about it. your only utility is what you can produce, provide, and if you suck at doing that stuff, then natural selection ought to take you out, right? I think that's where we differ. I don't believe that, right? But I guess the social Darwinist, at least what the name suggests, would believe that. So yeah, there's question number 12. Let me look at chat real quick, catch up, because I haven't looked in a few minutes here. Here I did miss one. Aiden Wiedner for $5 says, "Do you think we should employ vague WASP ethics or move towards a more openly religious movement, anti-secular? Many cons are still state over church. Thumbs down." Thank you very much for the 5, Aiden Wheeler. I appreciate the support, and I will add that to the backlog here. So I'll make that question number 19, okay, Aiden? But I got you. Thank you very much for the 5. Appreciate it. I have added that. If I get like quick super chat questions, I'll answer them on the spot. But that's something that's longer. So like the longer scale things that require an explanation, I'll like put those in the backlog. If you get like a short one that's like, what are your thoughts on macaroni and cheese? Then I'll answer that on the spot. That's kind of how I'll do this. But all right, there's one super chat. Let's see, did we get any others? We don't need infighting, in my opinion. I mean, I agree to an extent. Like, we don't need... Okay, caught up on super chats. We don't need... Well, I guess I don't need... I'm trying to do political stuff, right? Like, I'm trying to talk about culture and politics and all that stuff. And so, yeah, it would be a counterproductive use of my time to constantly, be an A-log, constantly make, like, anti-AF content all the time. But I would also say I really don't think that me and Nick Fuentes are remotely trying to do the same thing. And so I wouldn't call it infighting because I don't consider ourselves to be together. Because I'm trying to do, like, conservatism. I'm trying to push the Overton window of American culture to be more right-wing, more traditional, more Christian. I don't know what he's doing, but, I don't know. I don't consider us to be in the same sphere, like, whatsoever. Okay, so I wouldn't call it infighting. I don't think in many ways we are trying to push the same goals. But I mean, I do agree to a large extent. Like, we don't need drama, okay? I don't spend my time making all these streams about them and trying to blackmail them or stop what they're doing. I think they do that to themselves. It is what it is. Okay. All right, we're on question number 13. All right, unlucky number 13. Hold on. Well, I guess in some, that's debatable. That's debatable. Do you guys think 13 is a lucky number or an unlucky number? Because I screw the superstitious stuff, but there's a biblical case for both, right? 13 apostles, but then Judas was the 13th. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Okay. Question number 13. Here we go. Enclave Nationalist for $2 says, thoughts on Monsieur Z supporting eugenics? You'd have to ask Monsieur Z that. I don't speak for him. Okay. All right, question number 13. What is your opinion on third positionism? The idea you can have a hard right social order with left-leaning pragmatic to communist-like control of the economy. I think it's kind of a LARP, honestly. It's like, first of all, even like the term third positionist, that's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Not dumb, but it's so like, okay, so you're what now? I have a deep disdain for weird, like, esoterically fancy terminology. So, but, okay. Yeah, but the reason I say it's a LARP is not the term. It's just kind of the idea that, having, like, I guess as you define it, I'm going to take it as you say it, hard right social politics with far left or hard left economics, it just doesn't really work. Okay, I'm not a total, and I've talked about this a few times in the last streams, but I'm not. I mean, I'm definitely not a total like libertarian on economics. Like, I understand there are places where the free market has to be reined in. You know, we need to protect our own manufacturing, right? We need to protect our culture to an extent. We can't like woke corporations indoctrinate all the children. Like, I get all that. We need to promote families. But the idea that like the right-wing solution is to have super hard right social politics combined with like super far left economics. So what? You're going to have like a country with rampant inflation and shortages, and because that's the thing about a lot of like left-wing economic ideas, cringe or not, whatever you want to say about capitalism, they don't actually work. Like most left-wing economic ideas, whether that's, you know, nationalizing all the industry or massive social programs, like they actually just don't work, and they create a bunch of inflation. If you want proof of that, look at the state of the current American economy, right? No one can look at an economy where no one can afford to raise a family and be like, this is base, this is right-wing. And so, you know, I think in many ways it's just the LARP, you know. Like I would say I'm pragmatic kind of on both fronts, you know. I want a socially conservative country within, you know, what is reasonably attainable, right? But I want a socially conservative country where it's feasible and possible to, you know, raise a family, start your own business, own property, stuff like that. Like, that's kind of my vision. That's my ideal. Not some like crazy, and you know, it's the state America's going right now. Maybe that's what America is gonna like end up resorting to. But like my ideal society, if you ask me like what do I want America to be, my ideal society is not third positionist. It's like kind of basically a lot like what America used to be, right? It's a pretty solidly socially conservative country with enough personal and economic freedom to the point where it's possible to like raise a family and live in happiness and own your own property and kind of do that, but also not have like, you know, crazy degenerate communists on your back doorstep, right? That's like my vision. That's like the America, I guess you could say, I idealize, right? And so hopefully that answers your question. Now, again, the direction America is going, is that America necessarily the most realistic? Probably not, but I would also say the same thing about like third positionism. I mean, you really think that would ever take power in America? Well, maybe it gets to the point where it does. But like right now, I don't know. You know what I mean? So, you know, we can sit around here and hope for Caesar or something, but the realistic reclamation of the country is more so going to be through like what I mentioned, you know, just like trying to enact conservative policies over time in your states and your community, stuff like that, right? So, okay. All right. Bruh, communists aren't degenerate. You're right. They're worse than degenerate. So true. So true. The Paternalist for $5 says, thoughts on the Spanish Civil War. I will say that I think the right side won the Spanish Civil War. Thank you very much for the $5, Paternalist. Appreciate it. I'm honestly not super versed on the Spanish Civil War, the history of, you know, 1930s to 50s Spain, but I understand it enough to say that, you know, the right side won. Okay, thank you very much for the 5, Paternalist. Appreciate it. All right, question number, so we're on now 16. Yeah, we are in 16. We took a pretty long pause there. No, wait. Why does mine say 13? But then... Oh, because I accidentally made a copy. Okay, sorry. I screwed that up, actually. Okay, question number 14. My bad. Math. Asian is not good at it. What a disgrace. Enclave Nationalist says, can imperialism be based? Objectively speaking, yes, it can be. Now, do I necessarily think it's the American ethos? You know, it's like, I've always thought our country was always kind of founded to be this, like, republic alone, right? E pluribus unum. Like, I think that's the ethos. I think that's the identity of the United States. But, I mean, you know, say what you will about European imperialism. Like, yeah, we get it. No one in history is perfect. But objectively speaking, they will dig this up one day and they're going to get mad, but I'm not apologizing for it. Objectively speaking, European imperialism made the world a better place. And that's not to defend every single thing that every conquistador or whatever did. Okay, I get it. Libs, like, yeah. Guess what? It's the 1400s. There's a lot of warfare. People killed and enslaved each other all the time on all continents and all skin colors. Okay, we get it. But the fundamental question ought to be, you know, as you look back from the modern perspective, sure, I get it. Whatever, that happened. Okay, it's not, you know, and the Aztecs and the Native Americans, all that stuff, they arguably imperializing Europe. But the good stuff that we have in the modern world today is the product of European imperialism. You know? And can we really look back and say, from any metric, you know, social development, life expectancy, murder rate, war rate, development, I don't know, whatever metric you use to measure the power or the prosperity of a civilization, technology, whatever, and you objectively in any way say that the North American continent or the wider world in general would be better off if European imperialism never happened versus the fact that it has. I said this on Columbus Day, but it's true. If you woke up today to running water and functioning electricity and a road you could drive on and, like, not getting scalped or sacrificed to, you know, some, like, Aztec god or whatever, god, quote unquote, you can thank the European settlers. You can thank the European imperialists. You live in a society that was built by them. Okay? The world you have was built by them. Okay? And unless you're going to say, I want to get rid of all of this and, like, live in a teepee, okay? Which, if you're going to go and do that, okay, good for you. Then I'll say, all right, fair. But if you're going to live in, like, a society where you benefit from every aspect of European imperialism, but stand here and say, oh, colonization was so bad. Shut the heck up. You know, you can thank Christopher Columbus. You can thank the settlers, because without them, you know, the American continent would never have civilization. Just the truth. Or would at least never have... civilization is a subjective concept. Fine. It would never have civilization to any degree that you recognize or you consider civilization. How about that? How about that? Okay? And this is real. Christopher for $5, thank you very much, says, every colony that got independence post-World War II became worse countries. Because, enough said. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. There you go. There you go. It's so true. It's so true. Okay, not every country, but let's be honest here. I mean, most of them. Most of them, honestly. I mean, it's not... You're not far off, okay? Why would you apologize for something I didn't do personally? Again, yeah, absolutely. But I would, like, take that a step further. I would say... We can acknowledge that they were not perfect, as nobody is, because, you know, mankind, sin, it's the thing. But literally, like, it's not even a matter of Well, I didn't do it. Why? They objectively made the world a better place. Okay, those like evil, white people who came from England and settled the colonies, literally, they made the North American continent better. Like, I don't even just look back, oh, they weren't perfect, but like, that has nothing to do with white people today. Like, no, okay, yeah, they weren't perfect. But they were actually a net positive for the continent. And I cannot, like, as a citizen of the United States, look back and, like, honestly say that was wrong, right? Because what would this continent look like without the Europeans? It would still, who knows if they ever invent guns or anything, or, it would still be like tribal warfare constantly, and Latin American, or it's not Latin American yet, Central American empires who are sacrificing a bunch of, that's literally what the world would, that's what North America would look like without colonization, okay? So I don't even think it should be like, oh, well, we shouldn't have to cancel or apologize. No, we should literally be thankful for the colonists in the imperialists and all that, okay? And people will bring up Africa. They do that a lot. Colonialism screwed up Africa. That's not even true, okay? That's not true. Because sure, Africa has a lot of problems today. First of all, many of them are self-inflicted because the governments currently of those countries are corrupt and incompetent, and the societies are all over the place, whatever. But what did Africa look like before colonization? It was literally worse, okay? It was just a bunch of like tribal societies, which you still have. But at least now in Africa, because of, guess who? Europeans, as evil and terrible as they were, at least now you can look at them and say, okay, well, at least there's like cars and like some infrastructure and some somewhat functioning cities, None of that would exist without European colonialism. So we can look back on the North American continent. It's a pretty easy argument. But people say, oh, what about African imperialism? No, the Europeans left Africa a better place than they found it too. Okay? And, frankly, whatever. Say what you will. Should they have given back independence or whatever? But now that they have, what has happened since is on them. Okay? Rhodesians never die. Well, on that topic, like, since the 1980s, Zimbabwe has been ran by Robert Mugabe, and then who do they have now? Mnangagwa, that the crocodile, whatever, that's his nickname. So they handed over white control of the government to Zimbabwe. Rhodesia became Zimbabwe, whatever. And since then, they've had, Mugabe was their guy. Robert Mugabe was, the crazy, far left, anti-colonialist, white people hating dude. He did all the things they said we had. Oh, take the land from all the white people, blah, blah, blah. He did all that. He's had total power. Native Africans have controlled that whole country since the 1980s. And what has happened? The inflation, the money's worth nothing. The country's a disaster. How is that the fault of Europeans? You mean to tell me Britain is the reason why Zimbabwe's inflation rate has gone up like, how much? What's the number? I don't know, like 95 times or however much it is. I know they have one of the highest inflation rates in the world. Why, since they left, their currency has been inflated like 95 times. How is that the fault of the British? Oh, it's because the British did this. No, it's because ever since, they've handed over control of the African countries to the people that the left said for many decades before, they're the rightful owners. You have to give it back to them. They have screwed it up. They're running these countries into the ground. Okay? Robert Mugabe sucked. Okay? And he did all the things that people said were, he righted all the wrongs people said were wrong. Oh, the white people hoard all the land. Oh, you gotta. So, literally, what did he do? In the 1980s, he seized all the farmland from the white settlers, and he did all his, like, leftist economics and whatever. And then what happened? The inflation rate multiplied 95 times or however much. It's a ridiculous number. And the country sucks, and it's just imploding continuously in a downward spiral. Same thing with Zaire, now known as Democrat Republic of the Congo, all this stuff. It's whatever. You guys understand this, okay? So, Enclave Nationalist for $5. Thank you very much, said, I don't know if I can read that, but thank you very much for the $5, Enclave Nationalist. Appreciate the support. All right. We're now on question number 15. All right, let's do it. Question number 15. What is your favorite pet? By the way, this is the last pre-prepared question, so the next few will come from chats. Again, super chats get the priority, and then I'll probably pick a few random, and we'll just close out the night with that. But question number 15 from Dude Guy. I picked a not so serious one to break up the mood. Says, what's your favorite pet? I want an English bulldog. Okay? You know what I'm talking about? English bulldogs, like the really, like, fat, stupid ones. Okay? Now, I think the English bulldog is a very controversial, divisive dog among many people. Because some say that they're so adorable, and some say that they're ugly. I actually believe both things to be true, but that's why I kind of like them. You know, they're so, like, fat and lazy and stupid that I want one. I don't know what else to say. They're funny, okay? They look funny. They look so, like, dumb, and I love that about them. And they look like chill dogs too, you know? I've seen some videos of them. They're pretty funny. All right, they're funny guys. Now I will say, I don't know if I could handle all of, like, you know, they snore really loud because they can't breathe correctly, and you know, they have a lot of health issues because they can't breathe correctly. So I don't know, whatever. And I probably won't get a dog until, you know, I have, like, a super long-term girlfriend or wife or whatever, because I don't know, single guy gonna take care of that. And so, I mean, that's gonna have to factor into it too. Is the future woman gonna be bulldog pilled? I noticed that's very divisive among girls. Actually, most girls I've ever known or dated or whatever have thought they were ugly. And this has been a debate that the past few of my girlfriends since, like, high school, of girls I've dated, it has always been a debate, and they've always said that is so ugly, we are never getting one. And so I don't, like, we'll have to see. Might just have to settle for, like, a golden retriever the American way, you know. I guess that's more kid friendly or whatever. But I really like the English bulldogs. Okay, I don't know what I can say about them. They're so dumb, they're so fat, they're lazy, they're stupid, and that's what I love about them. I don't know. I find that I like, there's something about stupid animals that I find very very amusing. Okay. And so, like, you know, the Georgia Bulldog mascot, love him. Okay, Ugga, that is my guy. Top Ugga, real. So yeah, there we go. Bulldogs are inbred. Are they? I mean, isn't that how, like, any dog breed is made? But I guess more so of bulldogs because they're, like, made to be deformed. But whatever. The English Bulldog was my favorite. I'm glad we have some ugly dog nationalist in the chat. Okay, I'm glad we have that. So yeah, English bulldogs are cool. Golden retrievers are cool too. See, this guy gets it. This guy gets it. I like border collies too, but they're too much. They're too energetic. Like, I don't know if I could ever have like a sheepdog, a herding dog, because they're just too much. You know, there's this border collie that like my cousin's husband owns, that we've dog sat a few times, and it is very fun. But I'm like, I could never own this dog because this fool wants to play all the time. He never sleeps. He's just all over the place. Same thing with labs. The golden retrievers, a little more tame, well behaved. Bulldogs are too lazy to ever really cause you problems, so, you know, I like them too. Do you like cats? No, I don't like cats. I'm very anti-cat. Cats are mean. They're not even really cute, honestly, and they're mean, and they just, like, hate you, and they're no fun. I don't understand the appeal of having a cat, okay? I know there's some guys who like cats. I don't know, and they see it as like a sigma male thing. I don't see it. I don't see it. Can't stand cats. Okay, can't stand cats. Big dogs more based than small dogs. Well, true. English bulldog's pretty big. It's like decently sized. Okay. All right. Enough on the dog question, unless we want to revisit that later. Let's go on to question number 16. We're now getting into the chat questions. So if you want your question answered in the last few of these, put it in the chat. Feel free to right now. Again, I'm now like looking at the chat. I'm reading the chat. But question number 16 was the super chat earlier from Enclave Nationalist, who said, would you support free trade if our country's economy wasn't so weak? So I'd say I never really would support totally free trade because, you know, and that's kind of how you allow things to become super weak, whatever. But I would say that I do like idealize and support sort of the traditional American economic system, right? You know, think about the American economics. Historically, what we've done as a country is we have manufactured, you know, things for ourselves, which I support or whatever, and we've traded with other countries. Like, I'm not against trading with other countries. Like, it's kind of necessary to live in a remotely, like, prosperous society. I get all that. But I would say no matter how good it is or whatever, like, we do need stops, right? We do need, you know, protections on our own industry, our own comparative advantages. And so I would say I never would support, like, complete free trade. I would just say we should trade with other countries if it benefits us, but also protect very closely, near and dear to you, your comparative advantages. Protect your manufacturing, protect all that stuff. You know, stuff like that. Okay. All right, question number 17. Oh, wait, that is question 17. Sorry, I forgot to change the... Oh, no, that was 16. My bad. I'm losing count here. Very confusing. I'll actually take that one from Jennifer. It's an interesting question. It's different. Question number 17. Are you a believer in Atlantis? Yeah, I think... Well, I would say I, like, totally believe in it. But I think it's very plausible that Atlantis could have been a pre-flood civilization, right? Or even maybe a post-flood civilization that got wiped out by God for a different whatever. I don't know. But that's just not, you know, mentioned in the Bible for this reason. But whatever. I think it's very plausible that Atlantis could be a pre-flood civilization. I mean, I know that the Bible kind of does hint in itself that pre-flood civilizations could have maybe been pretty advanced, a lot more advanced than we realize or know. And, you know, I think there's more than one story of Atlantis, right? Because I know the Greeks have it. You could argue, like, the flood in the Bible is, you know, Atlantis itself might be a regional Greek telling of that story. I don't know. But I think a lot of civilizations have stories that are parallel to Atlantis. And so, you know, Atlantis itself, as it exactly is told, I don't know. But I do believe that they were pre-flood civilizations. that were probably pretty advanced. And maybe that's what Atlantis is a story of. I don't know. You know, it's possible. I don't count it out at all. I think it very well could have been possible. You know, just like most civilizations have a story of a flood, right? Most origin stories of all these different civilizations around the world start with a flood. Why is that? Is it just some like human instinct? Like, we're writing folklore. We're going to start with a flood. Do you really think that's what it is? Or is it because that long ago in the distant memory of all these different types of people in different regions of the world, there's a memory going way back, or a story going way back regarding a huge global flood, right? The Chinese flood story. But you might say, oh, because you could plausibly write off, oh, Eurasia all have flood stories because of, you know, interconnectedness, right? So it's like, you know, China got it from Europe or something. It's a little bit of a stretch, but you could say, oh, that's where the influence came from. That's where the story comes from. The Aborigines have a flood story, and that's their origin story. The Native Americans, their civilizational origin story, their global origin story starts with a flood too. It's almost like there actually was a big flood on the earth at one point, right? Oh, Noah's Ark? That's such a crazy story, bro. What are you even talking about? Oh, you mean that's why, like, all these other pagan civilizations also tell of a flood? Now, they have a different understanding of it, but they also talk about a flood and civilization starting from a flood. Right? Now, because, you know, the Bible is the Word of God, and the Word of God gives us that extra knowledge, we understand there was civilization before the flood, like Atlantis, i.e. Atlantis, right? That was wiped out. But to the pagan civilizations that, you know, whatever, they're just going to say civilization started from the flood, right? Because they don't have that knowledge. That's why the Native Americans say the earth was flooded, and then after the flood, mankind started, right? Now, the Christians understand, well, there was a civilization before the flood. And so that's how you reconcile Atlantis, you know, and stories like Atlantis with the origin stories of most major civilizations all around the world. That's where it's all real. It's all real. Why? Because the Bible is true. That's why it's real. But I'm sure the science heads will cope and try to say it's like, because, I don't know, they just say, well, there's so and so historical or cultural reason why all these civilizations coincidentally have a flood story, because the mythology would... Shut up. Okay, that doesn't, like, you're coping so hard. It's almost like there was a huge flood. And how do we explain things like, I don't know, the Bronze Age collapse, right? Not saying, and I don't know, that could have been something totally different entirely. But, you know, there's like a period in human history where archaeology just goes dead. And then there's no civilization, right? You hear the Bronze Age collapse. There's this like few 100-year period where like we don't know what happened. Like civilization just disappears. I don't know. You know, I could be like falsely equivalating or whatever that with something, but it's very plausible that could be the flood. I don't know, you know. Maybe the Bronze Age was all after the flood. It was something totally different entirely. Maybe, like I said, I don't know. But it would line up to me. It would make sense to me, okay? Maybe the flood was before the Bronze Age too. Again, I don't know. But why is it that between the Bronze Age and like the classical civilization, ancient age, there's just this gap in archaeology that no one can explain? Nobody knows what happened. Or everyone just went up and disappeared. Really? I don't know. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And I will also say I think that many ancient civilizations were probably a lot more advanced than we realize, right? Like the pyramids. You know, it's funny. There's like that Reddit tier conspiracy, like, oh, aliens built the pyramids or whatever. It's like, that's ridiculous. But it is also weird, right? It's like, how did human beings back then build the pyramids? And obviously the pyramids would have been after the flood, right? Because they're not flooded away. But still, point being, you know, there's a lot of ancient civilizations that were way more advanced than we realize, you know? Look at like those guys in the Indus Valley. You ever heard of like the Indus Valley civilization in like kind of like Pakistan, India area? And they were like super advanced. You know, they had sewage. They had like running sewage, running water in these like weird like mound cities. And much like a lot of civilizations, what happened? They mysteriously disappeared. Where did they go? Oh, well, they had wars and all. No, they mysteriously disappeared. What happened? They got abducted by aliens. No, nerd. No Reddit tier nerd. They got flooded out of existence, probably. Like, that's what happened. I don't know. Okay. All right, next question here. We're on question number 18. All right, almost done. Almost at the finish line, folks. But question number 18 was a super chat I got earlier. I think it was from Christopher. So thank you for the super chat, Christopher. Send my opinion on the death penalty. Yeah, I support the death penalty. I mean, like I said this before. I know there are some Christians who are against the death penalty because they argue, well, repentance, so we should give people as long as possible to repent. You know, I understand and I respect that argument. Like, I think it's a valid argument to, you know, but I mean, like, what about the Old Testament, right? Like, the death penalty is endorsed by the Old Testament, but you might say, oh, that's the Old Testament, right? You know, we have a new covenant. We have Christ. Back then, it was like there was no repentance or forgiveness. But, I mean, there was, like, partial forgiveness, right? That's what, you know, that's what the temple and the veil and all that stuff is. It's just, yes, with the new covenant, now we have total forgiveness. We have total repentance. We have direct relationship with God again. But it's, you know, repentance is a concept also in the Old Testament, and yet the Old Testament simultaneously endorses the death penalty, suggesting to me, I don't know, that it is biblical to support the death penalty, right? I don't know. Like, I think I respect people who have the other opinion. I'm just saying that I support the death penalty for all the practical reasons, right? You know, I think there are criminals in our society, murderers and stuff, who genuinely deserve it, and I don't know, you know, give them a chance to repent, I would say, right? Like, you know, send a missionary to everyone on death row. I support all that. But the idea, like, if you go around and kill 20 people, you get to just live the rest of your life while we try to give you a Bible and get you to read it and get you to accept it, and you're just like a cold-hearted killer. At some point, when does society say, you know, because we keep in mind, this is like politics too. This is like government. When does society say, okay, like, it's time to pull the plug on this individual, right? When do they say, well, now it's time for this person to receive their righteous punishment, right? Like, I don't know. I know Christians disagree on that, but I am pro death penalty. So you should dye your hair color to make Asians even more mad about your internalized racism. Like what? Like, dye my hair blonde or whatever? Enclave Nationalist for $2 says, that's just objectively not true, actually. You know, I'm going to disagree. I'm going to actually strongly disagree with that. Because you know, one is significantly more American than the other. You know, the other, I know, is a LARP to many individuals, but I have to say objectively, I disagree with that take. But okay. Dye your hair purple. Oh, like what's her name? Ellen. She blocked me on TikTok, which is really weird because I never like knew I barely used my TikTok. But I went on because people were saying she made a TikTok about me, and so I went on and tried to look at it and maybe do some content about it. I don't know. And she had me blocked. I was like, "How do you block me on TikTok? I've never interacted with you in my life." So I don't know. I'll try to get around it. I'm like, okay, what? Do what? Because TikTok, I don't know if can you just like log on and look. I don't know if you can. You might have to like make a new account. Or I don't know. So yeah. Hopefully at some point I can get around that and see supposedly what she said about me. But Blonde Vince. But see, then I'd just be a K-pop star. Then I would be like more culturally Asian, you know. The streaks, the Korean boys and their blonde streaks, like 2012. Simpler times in America, by the way. Remember when all the Asian kids used to have like the blonde streaks? Which I low-key just always thought looked kind of stupid. Like, I don't know, it just looks unnatural, you know. But yeah, I'm not unless it were for some like hilarious bet that I lost. I would never go blonde. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so we're on question number. I might take more than 20 questions, honestly. By the way, but we're calling it 20 questions because it's a round number. Okay, I'll interact with chat after it. It'll be informal, but we'll keep it going until probably about 11. Okay, but all right. Question number 19. Was a super chat earlier. I honestly forgot who it was from, but it said, "Do you think we should employ more vague, like Anglo-Saxon Protestant ethics, or move towards a more openly religious movement? Anti-secular. Many conservatives are still state over church." Oh, so yeah, so basically saying like, should we employ like vaguely traditionally American like aesthetics and ideas, or have like a more openly Christian movement? I guess that's the question. It's difficult because, see, we obviously want to get society back to a more religious society, a more Christian society. But it's a really complicated question in how you get there, right? Because society now is so... See, in the 1950s, if you ran on the message of Christian nationalism, pop. Because, you know, it was widely accepted by the masses that, you know, America's a Christian country. They prayed in schools. Highest church attendance rate in history. You know, all that stuff. And so there was a cultural idea that like viewed Christianity favorably, right? And that's still true to a large extent, but don't get me wrong. But what makes it difficult about America now is that like whereas the norm before was Christianity, the norm now is secularism, and I'd even go so far as to say anti-Christianity, right? And so it's a question of like, well, how do you get back to the old America, the Christian America? And is that an incrementalist thing? Do we roll back up the slippery slope? Or do we just go out there and say, this is going to be a Christian America again, accept it? Ideally, it would be the latter. But, you know, we have this like thing called like representative government. It pisses me off too a lot of times, don't get me wrong. But it's like you like have to like win elections and stuff. So it's difficult, right? And so what I would say is, obviously like Christians should be involved in politics and they should be very open. I'm a Christian and I'm in politics. My Christianity guides my beliefs. But like, how do politicians campaign on that, at least on a national level? See, I think if you ran in the specifically the Bible Belt, right? Specifically the South, I think someone could run for governor of Alabama openly, just saying, I'm a Christian and that's going to be my identity as a politician. You could win in Alabama. How do you win like a federal election, right? There's some degree of like I said, like marching back up the hill that has to be done. Right. And so it's a long process. I don't know if that answers your question, because it's like, Christians shouldn't secularize their message or secularize their politics. I'm not saying that. It's just like, how do you like make this work on a national scale in a country that is so secular now, right? Now, but on paper, it's still majority Christian, sure. But it's not. We know like it's not. Because you have all like the casual Christians. That's probably like half of the people who answer yes. They've gone to church a few times in their life. But they're not exactly pious. They don't exactly let the Bible guide their worldview. And so they'll cry separation of church and state too, right? Like a lot of them do the same thing. And so, there's that. And just how secular American society is and increasingly growing in that direction. See, I think that there are certain social environments more conducive to Christianity and spreading Christianity than others, right? Which is to say, like, if you have a society that's, I don't know, traditional, right? Lots of families, lots of traditional values. It's a lot easier to push Christianity on that society than it is a society like ours. And so I think to some extent on a political basis, we're like, if we want to have a country where we can like openly campaign on a national scale as Christian nationalists and that be popular to people, I think in some degrees we're going to need to roll back up that slippery slope by first reestablishing a society with the social conditions where Christianity hypothetically would be popular. If that makes sense, right? And hopefully, like, it makes sense what I'm saying. And so, I would say that's the utility of someone like, a Donald Trump, right? Now, Donald Trump does not alienate Christians or the Christian nationalists, but are you saying, and he does a lot of policies that are favorable to them, but is he himself one of them or like presents himself as a Christian nationalist? No, right? And so I think on a national scale, at least, that's kind of where we have to start. And then over time, like I said, as society in theory becomes more open to Christianity itself, then we can run politicians and have political movements that are structured around that, right? But it's like you got to get a point A to point B, because in a society where people vote, which I get it. Well, maybe they shouldn't vote. Well, they do vote, right? Okay, and like it is, like we know the country you live in. It is what it is. You have to get to a point where that eventually becomes widely popular. And because society is so secular, I don't think it is, right? And that's why I also say, like, you need like bridge points, and why, a lot of people come to Christianity through conservatism. Now, there's a lot of people who are Christians and therefore they are conservatives. There are a lot of people out there, including myself, who came to Christianity because of like conservatism politically first, right? Because we were raised in super duper secular America by secular people, and in a secular school system, all that stuff. And first we got introduced to conservatism that broke the secular conditioning, and then we came to accept Christianity itself, right? Like, to an extent, that's what it's going to take on a political level in this country, right? To get to point A to point B. It's going to take the middleman there. And I think that's kind of the stage we are right now, if that makes sense. If that answers your question, hopefully that's understood correctly by people. So, yeah. Enclave Nationalist says, can we at least agree that both songs are better than Union Dixie? Thank you very much for the 5. Well, we can agree on that because Union Dixie is the worst song ever made in human history. So the competition's not exactly fierce there. But thank you very much. John says, what do you think of this? I guess this will be question 20. Why not? But we will take, well, I mean, I'll interact with chat after this, okay? So it will not be over after this question exactly, but I'll take this as question 20. What do you think of Steven Crowder's new video? If you have seen it, I did see it. And Steven Crowder in general. I mean, look, I don't know the full story, okay? And like, I'm not here to bash any one, network or entity or whatever. But I will say, like, the contract he showed in that video was, it was a little corrupt. Now, I don't know if like all these networks operate like that. Okay, so I'm not like gonna get involved in the feud or whatever on that front. But I will say, I respect his decision a lot, and I think it's good what he's trying to do. Because I know he's basically trying to start his own network where you're not so bounded by super controlling contracts and all that stuff, and where there's more independence. There's more. I think that's virtuous. I think that's a good thing. I have always been, at whatever point where this becomes a professional thing for me, which is not. I'm a college student. This is a part-time grind, but I want to do it professionally eventually. I've always been of the position that it would be most ideal if I could be independent, right? If I could be like, Brandon Tatum, independent. Tim Pool does his own thing. Steven Crowder now does his own thing. John Doyle obviously does his own thing. That's always been my ideal. That's been my dream. But, I don't know if it's going to play out that way, right? Because there are a lot of situations in which it's much better for you to be part of a network, and networks provide security, some shield against deplatforming, not entirely, but some shields there, kind of like a guaranteed income, a guaranteed network. It's not exactly easy to grow organically on big tech these days. And so, I don't know what my own future entails. I couldn't tell you. I'm not opposed to the idea of working with a network one day. I will say I will never sign a contract like that, right? But a fair contract, working like one of those one days. Yeah, I mean, I would be open to that. But we'll just have to see. I ideally want to stay independent, right? Ideally. And I'm like, I guess independent with like syndication, right? So maybe I do a podcast or a show that gets put out on different places, but I also get to keep my own rights to it, if that makes sense. Like, I think that's the ideal kind of like dream for me. But, we'll see, right? I'm not going to say this or that because I don't know how life is going to turn out. I will take opportunities if I believe they're good opportunities. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, respect to Steven Crowder. And I've always liked the guy, by the way. I've never had anything against him. I know people, there are some people out there, okay? I've never been of this camp because I've been like, I don't see the issue. You don't need to, just because people are serving different roles in the movement or whatever doesn't mean you need to hate them, okay? Believe it or not, you need to, But then people say, oh, he's like controlled opposition, he's like compromised. Oh yeah, well, what are you gonna say now, Steven Crowder haters? Okay, because the guy like left the network where he's getting paid a lot of money. I mean, sure, the contract, he didn't like it, but he's getting paid a lot of money. He said, I'm not gonna sell my soul, and I'm gonna stick up for like the little guy and small time conservative content creators. I'm gonna do my own thing, and I'm gonna try to like stand up to establishment media, whatever. You know, that whole thing he said. What are you gonna look at him now and say, oh well, he's like controlled opposition because he's famous or he's powerful, he's influential? It's just ridiculous. Okay, but like I said, I've always had respect for Steven Crowder. You know, I like him. Nothing against the guy, but I will say to the detractors who've always thought he was like some establishment shill, like seriously, like what are you gonna say now? Now, I've always thought it was very obvious. Like, this guy's pretty good. You know, he's pretty solid on the issues. He's not, you know, he's willing to like push the window or whatever. But you know, people, oh no, because basically, this is John Doyle's take. The person who like first red pills you want to like prove a point about your political maturation by counter signaling them, and so it's like Steven Crowder cringe, Ben Shapiro cringe. It's like, okay, but like, I don't know, Steven Crowder, yeah, maybe now that you're like super deep and reading all these books, maybe he's not your go-to source personally, but to say the guy was ever controlled opposition, be quiet. Is like, that's stupid. So I mean, I'm a Steven Crowder fan. Okay, I don't hate the networks either. Okay, you know, I hope ideally like the creators and the networks can work something out where we have contracts that are fair to both sides. You know, that's the ideal scenario, right? The ideal scenario is, you know, and hopefully Crowder brings attention to an issue that a lot of your favorite show hosts face, and maybe he starts a movement where, like, you know, to an extent, it's almost like the commentators unionize, like not really, but you know what I mean. Fight for some like fairer deals, you know. I don't know, but yeah, mad respects to Steven Crowder over that video, and you know, like I said, I hope the networks and the creators hopefully can work out a deal that's more fair to the creators and still fair to the networks. Okay, diplomatic, just a businessman doing business. What can I say? Okay. So there's the 20 questions. Let's go to chat now and see what chat's been saying. This raccoon hat is low-key getting uncomfortable, but that's also my headphones, so all right. I'm not even okay. Let's see. Crowder is one of the good ones. Yeah, so true. What even has been people's criticism of him? Like, I'll be honest, I've not like watched all of his content, but everything I've seen from him is pretty on point. I mean, I don't know. The last thing I really saw from him was like last year. He came out and exposed like the communist ties of MLK, and I was like, mad respect. Like, this guy's doing that with that mainstream of a platform. Like, that's based. Like, what am I gonna say about the guy that's bad? No. But you have to counter signal so and so mainstream content creator because it gives me dopamine. Oh, Michael Knowles, he literally agrees with us on basically every single issue, if not literally every single issue, but he works for Daily Wire, so therefore you have to hate him on my behalf because it gives me dopamine. No, you're just not a serious person. You're a child. You view politics like teenage entertainment, which you literally do. Oh, that was so 2019. I was on that train first. I was trendy first. You're a child, okay? No, I I'm not in the business of making enemies, truly. If people are going to push things in the right direction using their platform, then, you know, I am friendly toward them. It's not that complicated. Vince, will this be members only? No, it's going to stay up. Zachary for $5, thank you very much, said, if I could ask for a second opinion, I am thinking about buying a gun as, okay, I'm not going to read the rest of your chat, Zachary. We are on YouTube, okay? So I will say I do not avow law breaking, okay? YouTube, we support the law. We support following the law. That's your YouTube answer. Okay, that's your YouTube answer. Okay. Now I don't know what state you're in, but there are many ways around that stuff legally. Like you could have your dad buy you one and transfer it, stuff like that. I don't know what state you're in, but I don't know if there's any states where it's illegal to own at 18. It's just illegal to buy in most states. And so the easiest path is just have someone transfer one to you. Legally, okay? For the record, for the federal government, legally, but there are ways to do it. I would say probably do that. I'm in Washington. Well, I don't know the laws in Washington. I know even in like California, it's a lot of paperwork, don't get me wrong, but you can do a transfer to an 18-year-old. It's just a lot of paperwork and a lot of work. But I don't know. I don't know. Now, I don't know. I mean, you're 19. I don't know if you still live with your parents or what the situation is there. But I will say that to my understanding, most of the time with gun laws, if you're a resident of the same house and you use your dad or your mom's or whatever's firearm in self-defense or whatever, like that's pretty legal, right? For most of the time, at least. I don't know the Washington laws. And so, there's stuff like that to consider. But yeah. We need to bring June thevincedao back. What does that mean? What did I do in June that was exceptional? I don't know. In Riverside and San Bernardino counties, they're handing out CCWs to a lot of people. You'd be surprised. They're doing that in LA now, too, which for a while it was virtually impossible to get one. You actually can get one now, which is a pleasant surprise. So... Utterly nonsensical says, hey Vince, can you do a video proving why the American Civil War wasn't this black and white war and was actually gray with historical evidence and sources? I plan on doing that at some point, either a members only video or if it's relevant enough, a main channel video. I don't know. I'm trying to like make my main channel videos more like current events type of stuff, but we'll see. But I got to do like more research on it first before I compile it into a video. And so that's the roadblock. Okay. But yeah, so once I understand it all well enough to like make that video, and make a sound argument around it, then yeah, I definitely plan on doing that for sure. Hey Vince, you're attending the Bull Moose Project Summit in April, right? I applied and actually got accepted, so I'm looking forward to Washington, D.C. I'm not going to say yes because I've not confirmed the trip yet, but I plan on attending. I've not made travel provisions, and we have not talked about that. But yes, I plan to be there. Fingers crossed. I'll see. Do I have any like exams on those days? It's April 20th to... No, not 20th. It's April, 21st to 22nd, right? Let me see. I think we're good on that front, though. But, yeah, I plan on being there. I hope to be there. You're attending March for Life this Friday. Yes. As of, 48 hours ago, yes, I booked my flight. We will be in D.C. I am unsure if we will do street content. I will try my best. Hopefully, hopefully my microphone still works, because it's the receiver's been through a lot of torment, so hopefully it survives DC and still works. But I will try to do street content. But yeah, I'll be at March for Life, and I'll be in DC. So real. Hey Vince, we're back. It's me. Sorry, still have a cold here, folks. It's me, the leader of Mark Kirk people. It's been a while. How have you been? I've been good. Yes, I remember you. The Mark Kirk War Room. In fact, I saw you in my mentions the other day. I don't know why. YouTube gave me a very old notification for no reason that's like current. And it was like Mark Kirk War Room mentioned you. Like it was a long time ago, but I saw it in my mentions and it was very strange. So finally gonna get to meet Chairman Dow in person. Gonna be base real. Thoughts on Mark Kirk? Who is Mark Kirk? Wasn't he like a governor of what was it? What was it? What was he governor of? Let me see. Wasn't he like governor of Illinois? Congressman of Illinois? Something like that? I know he's from Illinois. Who's Mark Kirk? Senator. Former Illinois senator who was a Republican. I give him a Mark Kirk out of 10. There you go. Mark Kirk out of 10. Thoughts on Ben Sasse being new president of UF? I commented on that in the student newspaper. Actually, here I'll read it because it's kind of funny. All right, it's kind of funny because the student newspaper at UF did a story about it. Let me see. And they asked all these kids like, "Oh, what are your?" It was about like conservative kids' reaction to Ben Sasse, and sorry, I'm getting every nighttime I get more stuffed because that's when the sickness kicks in. This is the worst cold I've ever had, unironically. Like I can't even speak during it. Okay. Some students said, "Oh, he's gonna improve the school. He's a Republican. He's entitled to his beliefs. I respect the search committee's decision. I don't think he's going to try and change anything about the way our community functions at the moment." Some conservatives want Sasse to continue to be outspoken on his politics, even if he doesn't meet some of their expectations. This is just poor journalism. That's like not what I said whatsoever, but the reporter is a very just a lightweight, a complete amateur, a lightweight. Many were saying this. But it says Vince Dow, a 19-year-old conservative commentator, said he thinks Sasse isn't conservative enough. I've always seen Ben Sasse as weak, as a neoconservative. I think he's weak. I think he's always been a pushover. From a right-wing perspective, I'm not really a fan of the guy. Dow considers Sasse as an inadequate representation of his conservative beliefs, which is why the 300-person protest of Sasse's October 10th campus visit came as a surprise to him, he said. See, that's literally, it's like, she's just, I actually said verbatim in this interview, I was like, it's not surprising to me because the left, eats everyone alive or whatever, but then she writes, the protest came as a surprise to him. That's not what I said, but I will say, I think she has a bright future in journalism, right? This random campus reporter who, totally botched what I actually told her, which I expected. It is what it is. In the mainstream media, okay? This is how they do it, okay? But It just goes to show that no matter how hard a conservative or right-wing person tries to cave to the left or appease the left, they're still going to get the same angry response of hatred and vitriol. Vincedao said. The best thing conservatives can do is just stand firm, because that way at least we'll get something done. So true. Dow doesn't agree with Ben Sass's views on immigration, trade, and foreign policy issues. I think it's better than if we had a complete leftist as president, but I'm not sure I would call it a win. It's lukewarm at best. So there you go. There you go. There's my comment on Ben Sass, courtesy of the Florida Alligator student newspaper, which again ran by total lightweights, total amateurs. Okay, they didn't have a clue. So true. But unironically, if you do look this article up, it's kind of funny because every person they interviewed is like, oh well, I think it's a positive step. I'm just like, he sucks, which he does. But whatever. It's at least we don't have some at least UF doesn't have some diversity hire, trans woman as the president. Okay, so at least it's not that. Enclave Nationalist says, Vince, you forgot my super chat. I was talking about Ben Sass. Okay, I was talking about Ben Sass. All right. In my English class, I had to watch the movie Selma, and I made an anti-MLK response from Enclave Nationalist. Based King. Good job. I'm sure you're going to fail that class now, but good job. Okay, I support you. All right. If you need a letter of recommendation for college, you may not get one from your teacher, but I will write one for you. Okay, I will write your college rec letter, and they're gonna look at it and say, who the heck is this fool? Get him out of here, rejected. But I will do it if that's what you want. Thank you for the 5. Appreciate it. Vince, have you checked out Off the Curb Ministries? Yeah, I'm subscribed to him. He's good. He's a good guy. Good teacher. Louisiana native here. Senator Kennedy is great except for his support on Ukraine. Plus, he is legit funny on his own. Nobody makes his jokes for him. Governor Edwards is terrible. Hope to replace soon. Yeah, John Kennedy is, that is his first name, right? I'm not being stupid. But Senator Kennedy of Louisiana, yes. I would say one of the better senators in this country. Call a crackhead. That's unironically the type of politician that the South needs, right? We need just politically incorrect old Southern grandpas who are have that demeanor. Call a crackhead, and are funny and are charmingly lovable and are to an extent somewhat corrupt, but corrupt in a based old school Southern, not corrupt in a modern way of oh, they're bought out by FTX. No, I mean old school corrupt as in old school South corrupt, old school Louisiana corrupt, where they basically manipulated their way into power, and you know what I mean, the old corrupt Southern politician, but that's also they're corrupt for us, right? They're on our side of the corruption. That's what the South needs. You know what I mean? So, his name is Senator John Kennedy. Okay, and then yes, because there's a bunch of different Kennedys out there, so I wouldn't want to be stupid, but yeah, it is true. Arnie Hernandez for $2. Good to see you, man. Says, will 2023 be the year of the Chad? It already is the year of the Chad. Many are saying this. Thank you for the 2. Look, it's already been off to a great start. The Chads have won. The Chads have already won. Whatever else happens this year. Many are saying this. Hey, Vince Dow, when you mentioned what Florida was like as the North basically being the swamp South and South Florida being Hispanic, as someone who's Cuban Spaniard who lived in the North, what's the question? I don't get the question here. I did say that. I don't know if there's a question or comment on there. Based boss hog corruption. Exactly. Like we need a bunch of boss hogs, you know. Like they're corrupt, but they're like anti-federal corrupt. You know what I mean? Real. This is what we need. This is what we need. Hey Vince, honest thoughts on parliamentarianism. To me, it has its highs and lows. Yeah, I mean, America basically is parliamentary. Not really, but you know what I mean. I mean, yeah, it's better because I think it hands some control to the people, but not whole scale. And that's what America used to be like too. You know, electoral college way less democratic than it is now. Senators chosen indirectly. You know, all that stuff. Um, so yeah, the advantage of parliamentarianism is like the natural built-in check and balance that it possesses. So, all right, it's 11:05. We'll end at 11:10. Okay, we'll go for 5 more minutes. We'll go for 5 more minutes. Did you see Steven Crowder's new video? I talked about it earlier. You can go check that out. Well, watch it on the replay or whatever. So, I low-key need some water, but look what happened. It's literally 1980. It's 1984. Look at that. It's empty. I filled it up before the stream. Part of it. It is empty. Actually, that's not true. There's like a droplet here. I just had the African child ration of water. I feel better already. Real. What I said is I've lived in North Carolina, but also South Florida. I would say Central Florida is a bit of North and South Florida with tourism, especially when you go to the more rural areas you see. Yeah, Central Florida is like... I think like the Mason-Dixon line ends at Palm Beach County, at least on the Atlantic side. I really haven't been to I've never been to Fort Myers, so I don't know on that side. But I would say it ends at Palm Beach County, and but like Central Florida, I would say is like still part of the South, but it's its own thing. You know how like Texas is southern, but it's its own thing. Louisiana, southern, but it's its own thing. That's how I view like Central Florida, because it's like it's not like traditional old like southern, but there's like Trump flags everywhere and a bunch of pickup trucks and like this like conservative suburb culture, you know, especially in like the villages and like Brandon, Florida, pretty based place. So yeah, I mean, I would say I agree with that assessment. Leave a like on the stream. So true. I forgot to say that. Be sure to leave a like on the stream. We only have 57 likes. We've had a lot more viewers than that tonight, folks. Be sure to leave a like on the stream right now. What are we doing? 57 likes? Come on, we can do better than that. We can do the amount of viewers we've had tonight, it should be about 100 right now. Okay, leave a like on the stream. So, sorry, I'm sniffling here. Rowley Gonzalez says I sent you a message on Telegram. Okay, well, that's your first mistake. I have not checked Telegram in about a decade. If you have Snap, just message me on Snap or even Instagram. I will respond there faster than Telegram. I haven't been on Telegram in a long time. So, thoughts on nationalizing the Federal Reserve? I mean, what does that entail? I don't know. I don't know what you do with the Federal Reserve. I mean, gold standard, yeah. The issue with now, it's very corrupt now, obviously. But if you nationalize it, what would happen is the people in power would try to manipulate the money supply to win the next election. And I would argue that's almost more disastrous than the current state of like having a bunch of elites kind of run it. And, and don't get me wrong, the people who run it are very evil and corrupt too, but at least they're like stability. There's stability to their corruption. Whereas I think if you nationalized it and you let like the president and Congress control it, I mean, what would they do with the interest rates and stuff? Like they literally just like raise them and lower them based on like electoral advantages, and like I don't know, I feel like that'd actually be worse. I feel like that'd actually be worse. I don't know. So I don't know what you really do. I just think that could actually end up worse. I don't know. You gave me your business card at Amfest because could I text you? Yes. Yes, it has my number on there. Correct, you can text me. Just don't share that, okay? I don't need John Willard sending me a phone call about how John Cornyn and red flag laws are like based. And you know how he makes different accounts? So probably make like a new phone number just to prank call me with. Hey bro, what are your thoughts on like John Cornyn? Yeah, real. Okay, folks. Well, it's 11:10 p.m. I will wrap it up here. Thank you very much for tuning in to the first Q&A stream. Newsflash, by the way, I'm getting a new computer, hopefully soon. Hopefully this is the last stream with this computer. And so hopefully like the technology and the quality of our streams goes way up, because we've been kind of limited by this very old Apple laptop I've been using. But yeah, until next time, folks, remember to leave a like on the video right now. Leave a like. If you leave without leaving a like, I don't know. I'm not gonna say nothing's gonna happen to you, but look at that. My feelings would be kind of hurt. So yeah, do it. All right, folks. God bless. Have a very good night. Alpha moves only, and peace.